Olexandr. So now we are able to speak about the topic that they announced. We thank journalists and colleagues who joined us today. We gathered here today because we understand that there is a lot of pressure in the relations between the power and civil society and power and opposition. We clearly understand that this pressure and internal conflict is really dangerous in conditions because this can be used by our main external enemy, Russia. I propose to discuss signing of Steinmeier formula and the ways how to regulate situation in Donbas, and also about communication of the new power, how they bring information to people. And we have a lot of speakers and time is lacking, and let's start with the opening remarks, 5 or 7 minutes each, and then there will be Q&A session with journalists and experts. I won't speak much. I would like to present our speakers. This is Alexander Kachura, MP, Sluga, Narodu faction, Iryna Gerashchenko, MP, European Solidarity co-chairman, Sovsun, Holos faction MP, Roman Bezsmertnyi, ex-representative of the member group in Minsk group, Andriy Senchenko, head of NGO Syla, Prava, Yuriy Gudymenko, representative of party Demokratychna Sokyra, Olexandr director of the Defense Reform Center. So let's start with Alexander, and he is going to tell us about how the power sees the regulation of situation in Donbas if security is not provided in full. They just shifted to political part. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alexander Kachura. I represent Sluga Narodu faction. I'm MP. First, I would like to say that from my colleague, I expect some criticism and less criticism and more proposals, because now we face such a situation that people roughly criticize power, the president, Mr. Zelensky, but they do not propose something else. We would like to hear your proposals from civil society and representatives of political parties. They should provide their opinion. We should have proper information platform. We should not just discuss, we should come to conclusion that may be introduced by office of the president and by other faction in some normative acts or in some plan of actions. I know that normative negotiations 3+1 are planned, and there they will discuss the concept due to which regulation of the war in the East will happen. And I believe that we should base our ideas on this. We know about the plans, about these negotiations, and we should speak about what we are able to do in order that Ukraine had powerful position in these negotiations and got good results, and get good results. So this should not be just political discussion. We should focus on recommendations. We need dialogue and compromise. And UCMC, we will prepare recommendations. We will publish these recommendations, and we will bring them to parties and the presidential office. Maybe Iryna will start. Thank you, dear colleagues. It is really interesting to hear 3 things about this topic. So, dear representative of the power, we are expecting some proposals and plans from you, because you should regulate these issues concerning resolution of the conflict in the East. And this shows that there is no plans of power, and this is the most dangerous, about recommendations and proposals. As Roman Petrovich Bezsmertnyi, I directly participated in negotiations, and I participated many times in the working group, and 70% of Sluga Narodu members, they do not know that there is no separate Donbas and Minsk process. They believe that these are two different directions, but this is Normandy format, and it identifies the strategic tasks that are really important in the work of the working group. Also, I 70 times traveled to Donbas, and there should be, we monitored the situation there, and our team, for 5 years, we worked on the issues of peaceful resolution of the conflict, and the Minsk agreements were signed in critically and tragic days. Ukraine lost 40 to 60 people a day because of this conflict, and Putin always created some crises, Ilovaisk, Debaltseva, in order to raise the scores, and in order that Ukrainian party, together with European partners, face difficult conditions in order that Putin be able to dictate his proposals. And I believe that Steinmeier formula is the new Debaltseva for Zelensky, and it weakens position of Ukraine and raises stakes, and forces Ukrainian side to bear responsibility for implementation of this political thing. And Roman Petrovich may confirm this, that in the course of the Minsk group and Normandy format, different plans were discussed. Different morale side, Steinmeier formulas were discussed for implementation of different points of the Minsk agreements. But Ukrainian side never signed these documents. And one more important thing, all these formulas and plans and ideas and initiatives, they were discussed only within the security package map, and step by step they discussed how the key security part should be implemented, and it includes not only a ceasefire for a week, but withdrawal of Russian equipment from Ukrainian territory, and especially the issue of the border. And I'm really concerned, and we see discussions of political bloc that puts the responsibility of Ukrainian side and takes Russia out any responsibility, because security part is not discussed. Second, it is really disturbing that the power does not speak in one voice, and there was declaration during Trilateral party meeting, and they said first that the security issues should be resolved, then political part. And if the power wants advice, first is to have strategy to present to society. It should be clear, and step by step. Second, to speak one voice. And in the parliament, they speak, for example, with 3 deputies, and each deputy provides his own opinion concerning this issue. Then you should not play to the hands of Putin. You should not believe that he may like you. All the presidents went through these crises, that I am ideal, I am the best diplomat, I'm the best negotiator, I will be able to make an agreement with Putin. But it is impossible to make an agreement with Putin, and it is important to defend the territorial sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine. And now we see that the power tries to decrease the so they did. They should say that Devaltseva should be freed, and in the context of disengagement of forces in Zolote, they do not raise the issue that on this day, Zolote checkpoint should be opened. And in the Minsk, they said that in Zolote they should disengage and checkpoint should be open. And now Russian forces are reinforced there, and they do not speak about checkpoint. They speak only about disengagement. And in the Minsk agreement, there is no such word as disengagement and withdrawal. They spoke only about withdrawal of hardware, hard equipment, and and where do they withdraw our party? To the field where there are no fortifications and infrastructure. And the Minister of Defense, in the course of Q&A session, he didn't tell about the costs of fortifications that should be installed. And the last thing I wanted to focus about the third advice to you, security should be priority. Without it, we cannot speak about political issues. The fourth advice, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine cannot just look at this process. According to Constitution, it identifies and establishes domestic and foreign policy. During 5 years, we had informal Minsk platform, and the deputies had opportunity to meet all the coordinators of the Minsk group with the representatives of OSCE, with Kurt Walker, and other people who dealt with these issues. And in order to understand the processes that are ongoing in normative processes and the Minsk, and they worked on important draft laws concerning civil demining, humanitarian demining. And in this context, I believe it is really important to have initiative of the voice, and we supported this idea, and representatives of other parties joined to create a temporary special commission concerning reintegration issues that starts its work. And I hope that due to this commission, we will have a platform where we will be able not only to approximate our positions, but also to work on important mechanisms concerning the issue of reintegration and improvement of legislation of Ukraine on this issue, and monitoring how this legislation works, and the answer to the question what will be transitional justice. And these are the issues we should think of, and the parliament should be seriously engaged in this. About Normandy format, a year ago, Macedonia, that wants to become a member of EU, on requirement of the EU, changed the name to Northern Macedonia in order to get the right to join the EU. And we saw last week France and Macron, they violated their commitment to Brussels and EU. And he said during summit that EU is not ready for expansion, and they cannot accept Albania and Northern Macedonia to EU. So we have crisis, a serious political crisis in Northern Macedonia, and pro-Russian forces are active there, and we see that this is not only a big historic mistake of EU, but also this is a treason. And on this backdrop, we may only imagine what Normandy meeting will be. Will it be 1 against 3, or who will be this one and who will be these 3? Maybe this will be 2 against 2. And what will happen to Ukraine in EU, and Ms. Merkel will leave big politics, and our power should think about it and provide answers, and we don't see these answers. They just speak about these things, but in international policy, you cannot work like in some humoristic shows. Iryna Volodymyrovna, thank you very much for your speech. But we gathered here to hear the proposals of each other. We have the president, and he has a team, and we have good plan of actions, and we would like to hear your position, because Once again, I hear your speech, but there are no proper proposals. I heard only overall phrases, but there are no proposals. That's why I call on you to speak about concrete proposals, not just about what you left for us after 5 years in power. Okay, let's move forward. Then we will speak about Plan B by Pristaika and how it may be implemented. Now I would like to give the floor to Inna Sovsun. Inna will be off soon. That's why she's given the floor now. Thank you for invitation. I will leave soon, and I would like to join with this discussion, and I will do it with pleasure. So Russian aggression is the biggest challenge for Ukraine, but not only for Ukraine, but also this is a global problem. The biggest problem the world faces on the political arena. And the biggest problem concerning overcoming this problem is Donbas is that we do not understand properly that this is not only Ukrainian problem. We do not see this problem as a global problem. We do not think about it at a proper level, and we do not provide proper information to the world about it. What is really important, I believe, first, we should understand the reasons of the conflict in Donbas and the reason of annexation of Crimea. I believe we focus mainly on technical details, how to resolve this problem, but we do not speak about the reasons of Russian aggression. We should understand it clearly that there is one reason of Russian aggression. These are the democratic processes in Ukraine, and Russian state, they are afraid of this the most. We see that Russia actively counteracts even really developed democratic countries, not to say countries with weaker democracy. And the biggest threat to Russia is democratic Ukraine. And the best thing we may do is to improve the quality of democracy in Ukraine. Maybe this is some abstract thing, but we should understand why Putin attacked Ukraine, and we should understand how to counteract. Why should we understand the reason? If we don't understand that, we will focus on minor details. We won't understand how our enemy thinks, how Putin thinks. And here we may get into the trap of speaking about minor issues. Maybe they are important, but at the same time, these are technical issues of regulation of the conflict, and they hardly bring good results. The aim of the Putin is non-existence of Ukrainian independent democratic nation, and we should remember about it, all those who speak about this topic. In this situation, it is really important to explain to the world why Putin attacked Ukraine. We see that Ukraine for 2 weeks was in the headlines because of negotiations between Trump and Zelensky. Everyone speaks about Ukraine. And different people speak about Ukraine except representatives of Ukrainian power. We do not hear the position of Ukraine, even concerning scandalous talks between America and Ukraine. Ukraine is an object. It doesn't show its value, its subjectivity to the world. And we should do it by common effort. We should show that Russia is the enemy of democratic processes in the world, in Ukraine, in US, and elsewhere, where it helps to establish anti-democratic forces. And the main what we should do is to build coalition at the international level, coalition based on values, coalition that will oppose spread of Putin's ideas in the world. And only with the help of this coalition, only at the level of spreading other ideas, we will be able to overcome Putin's aggression. negotiations with Russian aggressor, with Putin. We cannot negotiate with them. We cannot deceive him during negotiations. If you believe so, this is weak position, and international partners, they should trust and support Ukrainian position and understand Ukrainian position. It is dangerous to go into negotiations with Putin without proper support of the partners. And no political leader was able to beat Putin in negotiations. It is naive to believe that a person who is less than 5 years in power will be able to do so. We should understand it clearly. This is so no one in the world knows how to oppose Putin properly, how to beat him. This is not recognition of weakness. This is a recognition of position in the world. And here we should act together with our international partners, and we should build a network of support. And I would like to focus on the fact that we do not understand the position of power, how they will build this network of support for Ukraine. 2 weeks ago, the parliament adopted the plan of actions of the government. I read it carefully, and I was surprised of the plan concerning international politics, foreign policy. There were different goals for different ministries. For the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that should deal with, first of all, counteraction to Russian aggression. The first goal, Ukrainian business, culture, and sports will get proper support abroad. Second goal, Ukrainians are satisfied how the state supports them abroad. And this is about consulates, if you may think otherwise. And Ukrainians travel without visas in the world. And I was really surprised that in the goals of the ministry, in the country that is in war, part of country is annexed by Russia, and no word is said that we need to counteract at the international platform and to reinforce sanctions to counteract Russian aggression. And I believe this is a weak position. I do not know why this position of the ministry was formed like this, but I clearly understand that this position of passive participation of the ministry, it is really weak, and this plays into the hands of Putin. And the last thing I want to say, we should build the network of support at the international level. We should speak with the international leaders and heads of the states, different organizations. It is also really important to speak with the representatives of different forces inside the country. Holos party initiated, and other parties, European Solidarity and Sluga, Narodu and Batkivschyna party, want to create a special commission concerning restoration and territorial integrity of Ukraine, and we are really glad that our voice was heard. And we are now building and understanding that the parliament should be the party of this process. And the value of the parliament is not only to satisfy the requests of some political parties. The importance of the parliament, we should stress this importance, because the parliament represents different positions, different experience of different people. And the parliament is also a part of promotion of Ukrainian agenda in the world. There is parliamentary diplomacy. They cooperate with different international partners. And if parliament, president, government, and civil society understand what we do and where we are moving, this will reinforce our position. Unfortunately, during the last week, we saw that some representatives of power, they speak in different voices, and separate representatives of the party Sluga Narodu, they were trying to find enemies, not friends. And inside the country, we should have unified position in order to get support. and to promote our ideas at an international level. And separately, we should note that we should speak more with the military, especially concerning disengagement, military strategy. Unfortunately, we often hear from Ukrainian servicemen that they do not understand what the strategy is. And the army that doesn't understand the strategy, this is a weak army, and we cannot make our army less powerful. Our army revived and it became stronger in these 5 years, but we should speak about them more. So I would like to ask you, we understand that we should build democracy, build international coalition, and communicate better. The fault of the power is evident here, but let's go back to practical issues. In the situation we face, do we need to quickly implement these decisions, or should we remain in status quo? Do we need Normandy negotiations on conditions we have now? Let's speak about practical actions. We would like to provide recommendations, and maybe part of the recommendations will be heard, and we will be able to reach some compromise. And not to make this conflict bigger to new Maidans that may be used by our enemy. I would like to give the floor to other participants to speak on this. I believe that we may negotiate with Putin only if we have a strong position. Unfortunately, during the last months, there was no a lot of communication with the power, with coalition, in order to understand whether their position is strong. We hope that temporary commission that has a special status in the parliament will enable us to create a more comprehensive picture to understand what is going on inside the power and what are negotiation positions. Until they are identified or not known, maybe they are identified for someone, but we do not know about them. I believe that today we should not go to negotiations having weak position. This is wrong strategy of the power, and it shouldn't be done. And we should build consensus, international support, and then we may go to negotiations. Roman Bezsmertnyi is given the floor, and he will tell us his opinion on this topic. Thank you. So I would like to ask you to go to the movie, the cinema. Now on Ukrainian screens, there is a film, nearly the first time when Ukrainian audience may see it before American audience, and this film is by Disney. This is called Cheklunka, and this is the war between good and bad. And in this movie, there is a force. There is of good and the forces of evil. When it is easier to make good, when you bring ideas, when you have Christian values, or when you have force. And we brought young children to watch this movie, and I was not really attentive during the first 5 years, but translators, they provided such wonderful translation, and they interpreted it in accordance with current situation. So please go and see the movie. So first you should watch this movie. You know that there is a film, first part of this film with Angelina Jolie playing the main part about this enchantress. So next you should read this year high school economics. Karaganov and Suslov prepared a report. This is new understanding and the ways to reinforce strategic stability. And in this document, you may read such things as world is got tired of peace. This is the first. Maybe we should lift limitations on production of ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and do not limit small and medium-range missiles production. Maybe there is a moment when high-precision technological weapons may compensate nuclear potential in the majority of countries of the world. And the fourth, why should we limit the number of countries that may have nuclear weapons? So why I ask to do such simple things and to watch this movie? Because in one, it is shown how good may protect itself, and the second will show how evil will look like in 5, 10, or 20 years. This is really important to understand what we want and what we should fight. Then I would like to divide recommendations on tactical and strategical ones. The first tactical, we should not think that the world will, the peace will come tomorrow. On the agenda, we have deployment not only bilateral, multilateral conflicts, but also continental and maybe global conflict may happen. Serious conflict with the use of weapons, modern weapons, I mean, not war in the trenches, but I mean war with modern weaponry. And this means that the task number one is to build our defense and industrial complex and to build our nation, taking into account security issues and the offensive as the way of defense. I speak about it from the start. Yes, the war is a tragedy, it is evil, but this is a chance to build our economy, to build our capable army, and not only to protect ourselves, but also to become a part of continental global security. This is not a surprise for you that today's potential of Ukraine, it equals the sum, not only Central European nations. I'm not speaking I don't even speak about some components. We should understand our capabilities and our strategic and tactical potential. That's why I would like that the people's deputies who say that we spend too much for defense, they should forget about it. We should not reduce, we should increase expenditures for defense. This is a really important thing, a priority in current situation, because the problems we face now, they really should be provided with proper response. We should not say that we didn't understand the situation, that's why we lost. So this topic is really important for us, this industrial and production complex and the formation of our army. Next, it is evident, you have 3 more minutes. It is evident that in this respect, the issues of foreign policy should be about the formation of the bloc. Having the aim to join NATO, the first task of the bloc should be to deter aggressive actions and oppose aggressive actions of Russia in Europe. But this is not only about weapons. This is also information attack of special services, subversive groups, and so on. Ukraine faced the situation, and we should speak about it. And we should form proper force in the Central Europe and in Europe on the whole, based on those capabilities that we have now. And this means that Ukraine should have initiatives that would concern the system of the security of systems in the region, the regions of former Warsaw Agreement. These countries, they communicate now, they may communicate, and here we should start with the serious plans. And this will make Ukraine a subject in the world, and this will allow Ukraine to raise the issue concerning implementation of the statute of UNO, concerning 47, 46, 47, 48, concerning formation of military and staff system and national units of army to form the UNO forces, because starting 1946 no one spoke about it and no one did anything about it. Inside the country it is evident that we should develop the block of laws concerning the process of reintegration of Crimea and Donbas, and here I hope that the Council, the President, will do its job, and also temporary special commission should contribute more and to support this idea in the Parliament. Here we need understanding that Ukraine, having a strategic task, it should re-establish the state. The situation changed. Upgrade policy is replaced by opposition policy. There are threats, regional, continental, and global conflicts of different character. We are not ready for this. We see the task that we have now, land, market, and look, after the comma, at a minimum level, we look inadequate in such situation. It means that we should get prepared, and we should re-establish our state. We should change the model in accordance with the threats we face. And the next topic. It is pleasant to see this wind of novelty, but this looks like a goal in itself. But digitalization is a way of communication. It is not an end goal, and we should have civil society, civil area of Normandy and the Minsk processes. So the system of accessibility, and Russia will do it vice versa. Russia will hide the processes, and they will continue with their totalitarian model. And Ukraine should face the challenges and have absolutely another approach to this. Morale plan, I would like to mention it. So there was a position, but Ukrainians did the right thing about this document. And Pristeka did it wrong when he signed the document in Paris, and this document was not made public. And this won't resulted in drawbacks. And now we face the situation, and this is in accordance with the scenario. Let's get rid of taking these narratives and discussions that Russia proposes. This is difficult, but we should stop following the idea of Russia, and please, you should watch Maleficent, Mistress of Evil's movie, and you should take into account all that was said there. So Russia and all representatives of the Normandy processes, if they do not meet our conditions, that Plan B will be implemented, the wall or isolation for Donbas. Do you see it as realistic, or whether it is a good negotiation position? There are some contacts in France and Germany, and I may tell you at what hour it is good and at what hour it is bad. This because everything depends on the situation on the ground. And in Donbas and internationally, Kiev, Berlin, Paris, and Moscow, they cannot resolve all the issues. Now we face situation in Washington. It may provide plus or minus to the process. So we should understand the current situation in the world, and we should understand how to use the situation. So some time passed, and you see how situation changes on the ground and in the media. Moscow says that the meeting is possible, then Peskov says that it is impossible, and Medvedev says it is possible, or vice versa. This is a classic behavior of the totalitarian regime. Then Berlin and Paris, how they behave, and Washington. And you will be able to establish at what moment there may be a telephone conversation or bilateral meeting or trilateral meeting. I am against emotional decisions in the system of coordinates as it was done. And what about Macron's position and the approximation of France and Russia? What we need, Ukraine needs to speak at the technical level with Moscow, because we do not understand the whole component when we act. We make some political decisions, but negotiations about technological issues, they should not just explode. Fishermen started, then they took decision on electricity, and society, government, and the situation should be understood properly. This is not political level, so we should intensify our actions in Paris and in Berlin. But this is not about actions of Pristaika. This should be another person or special ombudsman of president for these negotiations, representative of the president. And we should propose the new model and the new content for the dialogue, taking into account the situation in Ukraine. For me, it is evident that Steinmeier formula is not on the agenda now. We should not take it into account. We need new content. And the president may provide it through a special representative of the president. Why it is complicated and not well perceived? Because institutionally we are failing. I attend fifth round table during this month. A lot of interesting opinions are heard, but they are not being absorbed. There's no one who can take this opinion to hear them properly. I have a question to Olexandr. Are you ready to use our ideas? I am ready. We have 254 people in our faction, and I will bring these ideas to the deputies and to the president office. We asked people from office to come, but they said that they have no one to attend the meeting because those who understand this topic, they are all in Japan now. I give the floor to Andriy Yusov, a representative of the resistance capitulation movement. Good afternoon. About what resistance movement appeared. This is not just organizational form, but also these are public views, because sociologists say that half of people are against special status, federalization, and this big part of society, they felt threat for themselves, for the state, and for national interests. That's why protest movement appeared. Actions on Maidan and on other squares, not because people are brought for money. As representatives of the Power Party blamed us. This is not about technology. This is natural response from society. What is the reason? This is capitulation rhetoric, and we didn't have it before. A lot of declarations from official power and presidential office and power in, party of power. They say that we should stop war, not Russian aggression, and that capitulation is ongoing, and we should reduce social expenditures and a lot of other things. If this is a conscious policy of power, it is a mistake, it should be corrected. If otherwise, we should increase the professional level, but capitulation rhetoric should be stopped, and we should guarantee. These are simple things, and last week, Ukraine voiced the priority of security bloc, and Ukrainian society should have the idea that there should be proper control at the Ukrainian border, and then we will continue. Then the pressure will fall. But is power ready to guarantee this? About the unification of the position of the party. During 1 week, different declarations are provided from different representatives of Sluga Narodu party from presidential office. And the same conditions concerning liquidation or dissolution of DPR and LPR, and at the same time the Minister of Foreign Affairs says, if you do not want Steinmeier formula, then we will cut social benefits. By these declarations, the power organizes protests by themselves. You should not search for some undercover processes. If there is one proper state policy in communication with the society, I believe the society is ready to hear the power. About practical elements to establish the dialogue with society. When we are speaking about resistance movement, these are people who join movement strikes in south and east, and people there, they are afraid of repetition of Russian Spring, and they believe that the power won't protect them. Our movement supported the creation of a temporary special commission, and we thank for this initiative, for this decision. And also we provided the list, and we ask to support this list. This is public list. It is really important that we have mono majority in the parliament, and the special commission should not just to bring position of power, but to establish dialogue between the power of the party of power, different other parties, and the civil society. And this will be a gesture of goodwill from the office of the president. Also, there are some issues concerning discharge of the head of the office of the president. We believe that such person, Andriy Bogdan, when he is in office, the dialogue with the public will be complicated, because by his public actions, he each time disturbs the society, and the president suffers because of this. And the president and his spokesman said that they are ready to bilateral dialogue with the president of Russian Federation. Why do they make such declarations? It means that Normandy format is not needed. They should just get prepared to bilateral negotiations. But they are relevant only when two parties want to get mutual understanding and peace. And if motivation of aggressor is to dismount and ruin our country, how can we negotiate with them? about normative format. Russia provided requirements. They said that the meeting should be resultative and well prepared. Is there a guarantee from the side of Ukrainian power that those points that were voiced by Ukrainian representatives last week, that such as cannot be revised, that the security bloc is a priority? If there are such guarantees, then normative meeting won't happen in the nearest future because Putin doesn't need it. And it means that recommendation to power is to prepare and to reinforce our military capabilities, economic strength, and do not set turbo regime, turbo mode. Ukrainian society should get clear signal that this is systemic actions, and then the word capitulation will disappear from public discourse. Andriy Senchenko. Dear colleagues, I'm going to start the issue of reintegration of Crimea and Donbas. These are not just the issues. This is the fate of the country and the fate of those 6 million of our countrymen who now live in occupied territories of Crimea and Donbas and or fled to the territory of the Russian Federation mainly. Also, we may add about 1.5 million of our countrymen who are IDPs. They are waiting for the resolution of conflict, and they wait for return of Crimea and Donbas in order to go home. I have a question. We have a lot of speakers here. Who is IDP? Senchenko. If you're allowed to the meeting of the government, ask them who is IDP out of them. And these are 7+ million people who are directly involved in this problem. You may ask the same in the office of the president. In the Verkhovna Rada, there are such people, a small number of such people. Honestly speaking, 5 years was not enough for the previous power in order to get understandable program how to reintegrate Crimea and Donbas. 5 years, and the new power deals with these issues for 5 months. So first, expectations are high from the new power, and the mistakes they are worked on, and these 5 months may result in quick loss of trust, and there won't be opportunity to correct something. So no matter what they propose, at the end, the society believed that all actions of the previous government are wrong. But there were some good ideas, and unfortunately now I cannot mention them. And the new power may reach the same situation even much faster. I would like to speak about manipulations. During 5 previous years and during these 5 months, previously they said that there is a choice between 2 directions. First, Minsk without alternatives, or the war until the last soldier. But in reality, it was a lie, because there are other options, but the power didn't have spirit to do this. This is about Budapest guarantees. They do not even formulate the requirements to guarantors. everything ended in manipulation. They said that this is worthless paper. But this is propaganda from Kremlin. What is going on now? Once again, they speak about some proposals about Steinmeier formula or the wall around Donbas. So if people on top positions do not have any other ideas, they should leave because they are unable to work in these positions. In reality, there are other options. Why? One more manipulation of another character, and then I will tell you about other options that exist now. The third topic, when they say we will deal with Donbas and Crimea maybe in the future, maybe by Pompeo declaration, Venice declaration, because Berlin Wall fell somehow. We should understand when we speak about these issues, and if this issue is resolved in Donbas and we will have the same situation in Crimea, we will have a Crimean war. It will start from Crimea and then everyone will get involved. This will be the action of the higher level, higher than what we have in the East. So what we have except Steinmeier formula and the wall around Donbas. This was heard in Minsk. They spoke about amnesty in Minsk, and we understand what it is, that all participants of events that were there during some time, in some territory, that all these people should be under this amnesty. But there are people who got wounded, became IDPs, and they won't accept this position. There should be differentiated responsibility. There should be transitional justice. Because current criminal code now, if we use it without fanaticism for qualification of actions of our citizens in the occupied territories, then out of 6 people who live in those territories or who went to Russia, 1 million is in the zone of risk of being brought to criminal responsibility. This is absurd. 95% of those people may be imprisoned for grave crimes. They will be sentenced to 5 or more years. That's why we should propose and consider the options when this responsibility be differentiated. Grave crimes, and there will be hard punishment, and they should be caught and punished, and there are minor crimes, and there should be temporary changes to criminal law in order to regulate these issues. In order to replace punishment in the form of sending to jail, to some other punishments, and some public discussions were held on this, but former power and this power didn't touch upon it. And also there is a law on responsibility, there are some procedures, and everyone can find it on the site of Syla Prava website, and there is a law. This is rather big and technological, and each person will be able to find an answer there. And the main answer from this law, millions of people in Donbas who didn't commit any crime, in this law it is said that they are not enemies to us, and they won't be persecuted. And those who committed real crimes, there will be some differentiated approach concerning punishment. Unfortunately, Ukrainian media and the reaction of society depends on this. They paid 100 times less attention to these issues than Russian media. When we made these laws public, all Russian channels responded. There was some noise in them because this position ruins this wall that they build around Crimea and Donbas of not understanding, hatred, and everything else. Thank you. 1 minute, please. About the second component of the Minsk special status. Society does not like this idea. There are proposals that are oppositional to those arguments that are provided in Minsk. So it is absurd to speak in those territories about decentralization. During the transition period, Ukrainian power should take full responsibility for restoration of peaceful life of these people there. In order to speed it up, we proposed, and there is a concept of the second long transitional period. We proposed that the heads of the transitional administrations of Donetsk, Lugansk oblasts and transitional administration of Crimea and Sevastopol for all the transition period, they should have dual status. They should be the heads of the administrations and the ministers of Ukrainian government. And they, as members of the Cabinet of Ministers, should take proper decisions, and this would speed up the resolution. And next is elections. These elections should take place after transition period when peaceful life is restored. If you ask me about the time that is needed for this, for Crimea, maybe 3, for Donbas, maybe 5 years. Thank you. This is really interesting. These issues of the threat of non-disengagement and Crimea, I spoke about it in the presidential office with people who are responsible for international policy. And then they said that Germany and France asked to take these issues separately. If you asked, I would like to answer. Now, for us, agenda is formed for us. What is the main task of power? Is to formulate proposals, strategies, to launch public discussions in the country. If power gets support of the strategy, this is not the same as overall ratings. This is real support of the strategy. In this case, the forces of Ukrainian president in any format, in Budapest, in UNO, in Minsk, they will be multiplied by trust and support of 45 million people, and this is another force. Yes, we see that strategy of the state is lacking. Yuri, I would like to give the floor to you. And what should be done to resolve this issue? What ways to compromise you see here? For compromise, I see not many ways at the moment. We have a representative of the ruling party who asks for advice, and I would like to give him this advice. I'm sure that you do not like street actions of the protests. I believe you do not like to read about members of your party and the president, unpleasant things in the social media, and see some stickers on the building of administration. So you should remember about the difference between strategy and tactics. Ukraine and Russia, now they are in conflict. And they have been in conflict for hundreds of years. And the president and the ruling party, they are trying to make a tiny event and to show it as a key that you will be able to resolve the whole problem. You will never resolve this problem. Although sources from the office of the president who say about the future of Ukraine, about everything else, they only speak about Normandy format of negotiations. You should come up and say, you're the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the President, and mainly the President. Where will be our country? How our country will look like in 20 or 30 years? Where will we be? In NATO? In some customs union? Whether Russia pay a compensation to us for all those terrible things that they did in Donbas and Crimea. The main, what we propose and what we demand from power. And I'm speaking not about my party, but I'm speaking about Ukrainian society, the joint process. Tell us, for God's sake, where do you bring Ukraine to? Where is the place of Ukraine? How do you see this place? Is it in NATO? Is it in the EU? Does it have friendly relations with Russia? Or Russia is ruined? Where is the strategy? Where is it? I know for sure that in the office of the president now they do not deal with this issue. Don't even try to assure me the opposite. The power does not know where Ukraine will be. Maybe not in 20 years, just at the end of the presidential term. If you communicate with the society the idea that Ukraine will fight, will be in war, not even 10, 5, or even 50 years, and this problem should be resolved, that because peace with Russia is impossible. And maybe you may remind the conflict in Tuzla. You will see that such problems with Russia will happen repeatedly in our life. If we get rid of them in Donbas, they will go to the west of Ukraine or to Crimea or elsewhere. The only problem of Ukraine is Russian Federation as it is. And if you say to me, or the power will say to me that this problem is impossible to resolve, I will say it is wonderful that our parents didn't know about it. Because last time Russian Empire dissolved in 1991, yes, efforts were needed, revolutions in Riga and in the Middle East there were conflicts. And Berkut, Amon, bad people, and this should be paid for. And if we do not know how we will fight Russian Federation during tens of years, we won't be able to do this. They have a plan, they have an aim, and they are trying to reach it. And there are tons of ways for Kremlin. They choose different options. They want to return Ukraine in their sphere of full control. And now they are closer to success than we are, because there are high chances that we may get once again to the Russian Empire. Thank you for your speech. 28 years we were promised that we will be in NATO and EU, and gold mountains were promised by each political party in power. We do not propose gold mountains, and this differentiates us from our predecessors and those historic periods you've mentioned. I would like everyone to understand, and all representatives of NGO and Ukrainians, they should understand that there is no capitulation. President of Ukraine acts in the interests of Ukrainian people, and our political party also working in the interests of Ukrainians. We are on the one side, all others at another side. And we should focus on unification. Together, we should provide a powerful position in order to speak and to reach results concerning the enemy. Some people say that we capitulate and we adopt some laws. I would like to remind to you that during the previous presidency, in order to start Normandy negotiations, he adopted a law on special status of Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast. We are not going to adopt this law without a discussion with the society. We won't write it outside Ukraine. Foreigners won't write it by Russian Federation. It will be written in Ukrainian parliament in open dialogue with the Ukrainian people. This is the main message that I would like to bring to Ukrainians, and that's why I'm here, actually. And I believe that Yuri spoke not about proposals, but about the vector of development, where we are moving. This is not about promise to join NATO, but we cannot move in all directions at once. I believe, dear friends, I would like to provide advice to our young colleagues in order to resolve such important issues as war and peace. We should study terminology at first, especially our young colleagues. Maybe those people who are 50 days in parliament, it is difficult for them to understand this, but there is no law on special status of Donbas. We are categorically against federalization. There is a law about peculiarities of self-governance in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, and this is a big difference. First, there was a meeting in Normandy format, and Minsk agreements were adopted when our soldiers were killed near the Baltseve-Nelovaisk, and there was implementation of plan and voting in the parliament on these two laws. And I, as a representative of President for regulation of the situation in Donbas, I wanted to help factions to communicate because they have different views on these laws. And each 2 weeks, we met with our colleagues in the Minsk group in order to bring our position. And now the party in power, and I would like to cite these words, we are on the one side of the barricades and everyone else is on the other side. So this is the attitude of the mono majority to the whole parliament. My recommendation, I won't require comments on my speech. I really carefully heard your speech. Start with the simple things, with terminology. This is really important. We do not have another side. We have Russian Federation, and this is aggressor. We do not have others. These are Russians and their mercenaries who fire at our guys. We have peculiarities of the self-governance of the territories, and also Russia as an aggressor carried out illegal elections in Donbas, and read the law on amnesty. This issue is not in the framework of amnesty as those who committed grave crimes and those who tortured our hostages. So amnesty, as Mr. Senchenko said, only those who were under amnesty, those persons who are in transition period of justice due to propaganda, they're involved in some processes or some minors at checkpoints. So this is hard and serious discussion, and it is important to do it not with drums, and we should have proper attitude towards this. We should have serious discussion about transitional justice and who will be under amnesty and who will be not.
I have to apologize. I need to respond to some issues. People know this law is the law about special status of Donbas. And please do not try to deviate from responsibility. Thank you for leaving us. I would like to quote what the bill says. Prevention of prosecution and bringing to responsibility participants of the war events in Donetsk and Lugansk. Who participated in the events. We can read this ourselves, actually. If we speak about capitulation, we speak about charges. That's not true. Please do not pretend, dear colleagues, that you are on the other side of barricades. I do not know how Iryna sees herself, and here I mean our enemies. Who are our enemies? Russian Federation. You mention Ukrainian people all the time. Ukrainian people who are people who want what? Ukrainian people, they are my employer, but people are different. Now we have one nation, and please do not manipulate with it. Let us be on the same side of barricades. We want to have peace in our own house. I would like to give the floor to Olexandra. I wanted to respond to a statement made by Mr. Olexandr. Since Iryna Gerashchenko left, I would like to specify that there were two laws approved as to Donbas. The one is about special status and the second is about the amnesty. What you mentioned about the amnesty, this is just a framework provision, while the more detailed provisions about amnesty are contained in the law about amnesty. So the amnesty does not cover those people who made severe crimes and this was one specification. I am Chandra, chief editor of Euromaidan Press. Quite recently, we carried out research about Russian plans as to Ukraine's, which were revealed in the leaked emails of Vyacheslav Surkov, assistant to Putin. We made assumptions based on that leakages and based on the position of Russia in the Minsk process. So it is very important to discuss the Minsk process based on the previous experience and based on the analysis of Russia's plans, which was carried out based on the events during last 5 years and on the correspondence of Russian top officials which leaked into the internet. Probably in your handouts, I hope so, you have some analytical materials, you have tables, you have that summary of materials which we have. These days, quite often we hear about Steinmeier's formula, but I don't think this is the most important. This is actually about Minsk II. Actually, Steinmeier's formula does not deviate from the Minsk Protocol. Quite often, representatives of power keep saying that there will not be capitulation, the red lines won't be crossed. But in Minsk Protocol, we have capitulation provision itself. And we should clearly understand how they appeared in the Minsk Protocol. That's why I suggest to look back on our experience with Normandy format and with Russia. Back in 2014, when Poroshenko believed that the war could be finished quickly and easily, and he put forward his peace plan in 2014, and that peace plan laid the foundation of Minsk of Minsk-1. The protocol was signed in August 2014 and sent to Kremlin, which we can clearly see in Surkov leaks. In that protocol, Ukrainian steps were very clearly stated, and that peaceful plan by Poroshenko was discussed at high level in Minsk, and what remained that the monitoring should be on Ukrainian-Russian border, that is the security line, and a monitoring line should be established along the border, Ukrainian-Russian border. And today, when we hear that the red line would not be crossed, that we will first revive our control over border, and then elections will be announced. This is the position taken from that Poroshenko's peaceful plan 2014. In Poroshenko's peaceful plans, there were several items: revival of local self-government bodies, reconstruction of public buildings, etc. Unfortunately, all that was excluded from the Minsk Protocol. And one of the reasons probably was that due to the defeat of Ukrainian troops in Ilovaisk. And now let us recollect what happened next. But the military actions did not stop. Shellings continued and offensive continued, or mutual movements continued. And due to that military actions, Minsk II was started. James Sher, a researcher from the UK, described to me that Minsk II was signed in a condition when Putin blackmailed Chancellor Merkel with the World War, nuclear World War, Third World War, to be started in Europe. Under this pressure, Angela Merkel promised to encourage Ukraine to sign Minsk II. When we look at the difference between Minsk I and Minsk II, which was approved in February 2015, it is called implementation measures to implement Minsk I, but it is very different. The first statement is about the need to create the special status of Donbas. That is about elections on the occupied territory before revival of Ukrainian control on on the land and Ukrainian control of the border. This is the main difference between Minsk II and Minsk I. Under the military pressure, Ukraine had signed that protocol. Minsk II immediately because it is a result of military pressure of Russia and escalation in Debaltseve and blackmailing of European leaders. The result is that Minsk II actually will contribute to federalization of Ukraine. That is reflection of the special status of Donbas in its constitution. From that table, which you have in your handouts, you can see that in result of contributions made by DPR and LPR, Donbas will get special federal status inside Ukraine, but Ukraine will pay. And you understand that this is a strategic goal of Russia for its Minsk process. And if you hope to renegotiate this, so let us recollect first peace plan by Poroshenko and compare it to the result, final result, Minsk II, which was signed with the blackmail and pressure. Those who read memoirs of participants of negotiations in winter 2015 in Normandy format, and Putin blackmailed Francois Hollande and Angela Merkel, and he described that Ukrainian army is encircled, that it is almost destroyed, and Francois Hollande demanded Ukraine to confirm that it preserves control over Debaltseve. So if we want to continue Minsk process, which will end with capitulation for us, let us probably connect Western sanctions with non-Minsk process and something else. Maybe we should start thinking about something else, except instead of Minsk too. First of all, I would like to thank for organization of this round table. I'm very grateful to representative of the Sluga Narodu party. Before starting treatment, we should decide about the diagnosis. All today's speakers used the word combination Minsk agreements. I would like to explain that there is no Minsk agreements as an international treaty. They do not exist. There is no agreement at all. There is simply a protocol of trilateral task force in Minsk. This is a result of just negotiations between authorized negotiators, which means that these documents are not binding. Cossack plan is also just a sheet of paper, just like protocol. Representative of Ukraine was Mr. Kuchma, then there was a representative from Russia and from OSCE. Unfortunately, Ukraine got into a trap. From the very beginning, Minsk process was needed to ensure more or less stability along the conflict line, and the main purpose of it was to ensure a ceasefire. Unfortunately, ceasefire was never reached, and the Russian safeguards and conditions are not binding neither for Russia nor Ukraine. In any case, Russia remains not responsible for anything that it looks like promised in that document. So I agree with you when today you speak about the reality that Minsk has no alternatives. You should recollect that Minsk format has exhausted all its potential, and today Germany and France are tired because of sanctions. We have now three big military detachments, three military regiments by Russia in Donbas. Do you hope that they will voluntarily leave that territory? They would never leave, and we should insist that international sanctions should be strengthened instead of illusional elections, instead of that pretended organization of the Minsk process. You should insist on strengthening sanctions because Russia recognized our territorial integrity and borders, and you should bring it back to its responsibilities. Unlike Minsk sheet of paper, that Budapest Memorandum and treaty between Ukraine and our treaty on resignation from nuclear weapon provides that Ukraine should suspend its nuclear potential, military potential, while Russia guarantees its territorial integrity. This treaty, which we fully implemented, was violated by Russia. Putin threatened to Western countries that it is ready to use nuclear weapon, and in this case, the guarantees of the UK and the United States should be activated. That is, they should step forward and say that that they should interfere and protect Ukraine. This is about a practical advice to your new power. Actually, today, we find ourselves in the midst of global conflict aimed at redivision of the world, and this conflict is now in its hot phase. The majority of actions which are carried out in course of this redivision are of hybrid nature, which means that we have to increase non-military potential. This war is multidimensional or comprehensively dimensional. We have challenges in humanitarian policy, that you have to ensure coordination between governmental structure. You have to establish the headquarters inside the government which will respond to this hybrid war. During this conflict, our counterparties tries to use in maximum extent the internal conflicts, and inside the country you try to find your enemies instead of looking for resilience inside the country. I fully agree. There is a line between those who are ready to protect Ukraine, who are ready to protect its state sovereignty, and those who are enemies of Ukrainian state sovereignty. Please do not push this line back into Ukrainian territory. Of course, you have more than 200 with something MPs in the parliament, but this does not mean that you have to show your back to other forces in society who want to stand for Ukrainian territorial sovereignty. And the intergovernmental platform, which was mentioned today, should include not just representatives of your political force, but all those patriots who stand for Ukrainian national sovereignty. And my third statement, since we see this war as a hybrid war, and we understand that this war cannot be won in defense actions, so we have to design a sort of non-military offensive. We have to create a strategy today in a situation when Germany and France, besides us, are only participants of this negotiation process. You cannot just blame Russia and all your requests to Russian territory to liberate our territory. You should show and demonstrate the right behavior with the Russian Federation. The Deripaska cannot produce any minerals in Ukraine for the needs of Russian defense complex. The Deripaska should be unable to do anything in Ukraine. Actually, when today you allow import of something from Russian territory, thus you offer other countries to do the same instead of sanctions against Russia. I believe that your force and other forces should establish a platform where we will develop strategy how Ukraine will reach progress with international coalition and make continuous pressure on, military pressure on Russian Federation. Let us allow journalists to ask questions. I have several recommendations about withdrawal of forces in Zolote. The conditions of withdrawal require 7 days of total quiet situation. We should require that OSCE mission should be involved into communication about conditions along the contact line, which are grounds for first step to withdrawal of troops. So invite OSCE mission 1 day before the beginning of withdrawal. About modality of elections in the occupied areas, please forget about that. Today we heard that Russian party suggested to cancel an interview in process of gaining citizenship. You should insist that Russia should stop delivery of Russian passports in Donbas. They plan to issue 400,000 Russian passports. Russian passports in Donbas. That is, elections will be held by Russian party, and they allocate huge money for this. You are involved into the process when elections will be held, and this will be Russian citizens who will vote in these elections. In LPR and DPR, they have finished the census, and results of the census are not published. We intercepted the internal correspondence, and according to their data, total number of IDPs who left Donbas and fled to mainland Ukraine, 800,000 instead of 1,400,000. So the question is, where are those more than 500,000 of dead souls, so to say? Count that money which are paid to IDPs, insist on verification of the IDP list, because we internally finance the DPR and LPR. And pay attention at look at the secret data of the investigation service, because and somehow main intelligence department does not inform that artillery units are now holding a military exercise near Bogaivka. So these are 4 practical recommendations which will allow you to move in right direction. Any further questions? I would like to comment about OSCE. We believe that OSCE is an institution which will be able to contribute when the troops will be withdrawn, when we will revive control, when we will ensure rights of the citizens. The OSCE will be able to recognize that elections would be held freely and independently. I attended the Warsaw Security Forum, and I am a bit concerned that OSCE has Russian members, and I reported to the parliament that we should exclude representatives from Russian Federation in the mission which will be sent to Donbas. I'm Yuriy Gerashchenko, the former ambassador. Do we have any mass media representatives in this room? Do we have any representatives of the Foreign Affairs Ministry? Thus, we do not have any representatives of foreign countries. This is a question to organize. I can see a crisis in the panel because all the moderators look differently on the problem which we have been discussing. Steinmeier's formula was not discussed in many details. Much was discussed about situation or international situation of Ukraine, and we started to discuss that we should establish some coordination council with participation of all the parties and look for the way out from all that mess. In 1993, the Russian ambassador in Russia, Chernyshov, told me, sooner or later the Soviet Union will be revived. I do not know how it will be called, but I am sure that it will happen. And as soon as we manage to include Ukraine into that new country, we will succeed and others will come. This happened in 1993. And Ukraine made nothing to prevent this. You have to inform society, but neither the president nor the ministry. Why you do nothing? Who will answer? The issue is in communication. The two previous powers were destroyed by the lack of communication, and hopefully the lack of communication will not liquidate us. We have three countries. We have many political countries, 320, and I requested that Minister of Justice should cancel them. But we did not mention political parties. We mentioned that we have to establish coordination and to establish national consensus and to build up strategy. You say great words and they are able to inspire that there is no capitulation, but the most proactive part of society does not believe you, while that part of society which ensured your presence in power, they are not thinking in the categories, in the same categories. If we think today that any activist is an internal resource of any state, I only warn you not to be in the conflict with this proactive element. Russia wants to turn this anti-imperial water into civil water. And if as the government today you will lose your control and will ignore signals from society and give back signals, positive signals to the society, you may face the military counteraction, not with Russian Federation, but with civil society. We spoke not about political parties. We spoke about coordination center and mentioned not political parties but civil society, which should be part of this coordination. I'm happy that my colleague from Power have heard us about deficit of communication with society, and I hope that something will change. I would like to know to underscore that there is a lack of public strategy in Power how to resolve these issues, and this strategy should not cross the red lines drawn by Ukrainian people who have the right. Roman, I believe the answer, unfortunately, is very simple. We remain the post-Soviet country. Let's look at those formalities which Ukraine has to fulfill. Russia does not fulfill International Convention about prisoners of war. But why Ukraine does not implement it? The Russia does not stick with the Convention of the humanitarian victims, but why Ukraine does not implement this? We have the third head of state who pay no attention at the martial law and etc. The next, look. Those people who remain in Donbas, we call them terrorists, separatists, collaborants. We have, of course, among them, we have traitors, criminals, collaborants, terrorists, etc. But in our criminal code, we have just one word. And this one word should be amended in line with the requirements of the international law. We spent 5 years not doing that. We look at this war with our vision of 200 years ago. That's why we have made trenches, we have turned our servicemen into easy goals, targets, and they are shelling them. So that any people who remain in the area of conflict, all people, servicemen, victims, civilian population, look at these young people, but look at their landing. They do not understand what they are doing. Neither Senchenko initiatives nor Daniluk initiatives, they are not taken into account. They are not ready to hear something useful. We have the last question, not the comment. Question, please. And mention to whom your question. Tetiana Aharka, I'm from Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. I have a question to representative from Power. I haven't heard an answer about Plan B. The Normandy summit plans, if it will be and the occupation plan mentioned by Zelensky, there are big doubts that it will be accepted. So what will be plan B for Ukrainian authorities in case the plan A is not accepted? Thank you for this question. During my last meeting with Volodymyr Alexandrovich, I asked him about Plan B. But he said to me, I cannot discuss now all the details because our enemies will know our first plans. Let us make first steps with Plan A, but if the summit will fail or we will be unhappy with the summit results, then we will present our Plan B. I think that's its correct approach. I have to disappoint you. Mr. Pristaika had disclosed President Zelensky plans. We monitor the Russian TV. Plan B is now main topic on Russian TV channels. The plan about isolation of Donbas. Probably you have to include the party representatives, anti-capitulation movement, etc. This will be discussed, but let us wait because we have the head of the state. Let him state that this is our further strategy. I would not agree with the statements of Minister of Foreign Affairs. Alexandr, I like your manner very much. It is very relaxing. But I would like to draw your attention that Volodymyr Zelensky made the oath of the member of parliament, and you personally, you are responsible for the fate of Ukrainian people. And if Volodymyr Zelensky would cross the red lines, the parliament will be eventually responsible for the state sovereignty. So you have decided now what are your personal requirements towards your personal red lines, and understand whether you will support or will not support any initiatives put forward by any person in power which will violate your promises as the representative of Ukrainian people. I won't count, I won't believe that in some secret offices in the presidential office there is such a room where they can develop secret plans. I think it's a rather weak position. You should have Plan B and offer it to the President of Ukraine. Thank you, Alexandra. We have exhausted our time. Let us sum up what the authorities should do. First of all, watch film The Maleficent. Then recognize that you have big problem with communication. As an expert in communication, I can state this because I communicate with international experts continuously, and I should state you that you here are making a big failure. Then do not discuss Crimea and Donbas issues as one package. Do not continue to discuss Minsk agreements. Look for the alternative. We discussed the possibility to enlarge the army and to establish the coordination council on the issues of the hybrid war. And also we discussed a possibility to have a dialogue. The power should not, people in power should not isolate themselves but be open to criticism. And about civic initiatives and about possibility of transition justice. We also mentioned that Minsk agreements term should not be used. This is important for power because we have clear proves that this hybrid word combination was used by Russian Federation intentionally to distort the vision of this international document. The same distortion was done as to the Budapest format. We have to understand that there are no guarantees that Russia would fulfill any provision of the document. And also we discussed the danger of potential meeting between Zelensky and Putin face by face without participation of Western partners. This meeting should be coordinated with civil society. We will prepare the protocol of our discussion and we will discuss it at the meeting of our political faction. Thank you very much.